Welcome to SCAL6, My Favorite Things, Part 5, Designing Effects. Because SCAL has so many bells and whistles, it was tough to narrow down the list to just 6 or 7 to show you. So the video you're watching now presents my favorites from just the effects menu. Then, in about a week, I'll have a second video showing my favorite designing tools within other menus and panels in SCAL. Because most of these functions have several settings and options which expand the range of possibilities, I urge you to download the SCAL6 user manual. In it, I cover the purpose of all settings and options and show examples of how they change the results you'll get. The link to this manual is in the description for this video. So the first of my favorite things related to designing happens to be the bridge warp, which I showed you just before as something you can look up in the user manual. And the way it works is you have something, typically text, but it can be any shape. You can do all sorts of really amazing warping with it. But in this case, the reason I typically use this is because a user or a customer will contact me and they will say, "How do I do this?" And it's going to be some shirt design that they want to try to reproduce using, a different school or somebody's name or whatever. So just type out your text or pick a shape if you have a particular shape you want to warp, and then go to the effects menu. And as you can see, here's all the 20 plus different options that are in here. They're all so amazing. And the bridge warp is the third one down. So you select that, and this window will immediately open. And then make sure auto preview is checked. It should be. Now you'll notice sometimes you use these functions it's not checked. So you want to check it, and then that way you don't have to keep clicking on update preview. And then that way you can see as you make changes, you'll be able to see the effect that it's having. So in this one, again, as I'd mentioned before, all of these functions tend to have different settings and different options. So, but you just start playing with it. So you'll notice when I do bottom offset, when I go positive, it shrinks it up from the bottom, or I can go the other direction and go negative, and it will expand it down at the bottom. And then you can also change the top offset at the same time. You can sync the offsets so that actually it's like they're both being applied to the same, like a same sort of arc shape. So when they sync, you change one, it'll automatically change the other. Straight warp changes it from a curve to a sharp edge, like right in the middle of whatever you have selected, and that might be a particular look that you want. The scale width down here, this also just you play with it and you'll see that it expands out the letters, or whatever the shape is, and then scale height goes the other direction. So again, it's just something that you play with until you get the look that you want. Now here's the thing that was really cool. Someone the other day sent a design and wanted to know, could you reproduce this? Now my first instinct was to use the wave function, which is actually I'm going to show you in a minute. But instead, I started playing with it. I realized it was different. Notice how it's flat across the top here and flat across the bottom. Well, I was able to use this particular bridge warp in order to basically reproduce the exact same thing. And the way I had done it is I had selected the first 4 letters and applied one set of settings, and then applied kind of the opposite to the second one, and then kind of reversed it for the bottom. And then for the top, I used this, or for the middle one, I used the sync. So I have a video on it that I just released, so you should find it very close to where this video is if you look at them chronologically, and you can see how I use the bridge warp to create this design. So very, very useful function, especially for those doing t-shirt applications. All right, the second favorite thing for designing that I wanted to show you is the wave function. And what I've done here is I've typed out just a number, well, I typed out the word create and then made some duplications of it. And then when I select this and I go to the effects wave function, which is down here second from the bottom, it immediately starts to create a wave with those particular words. And as you increase the cycles, it starts to, add more waves to it. And then amplitude, of course, is how high the wave is. So it's pretty easy to understand. And again, like many other things, it's just a matter of playing with it until you get the result that you want. Now then, when have I ever used this? Well, recently I did a greeting card, and I wanted to design a musical staff. So I started with some lines and some notes and other musical symbols and such, and copy and pasted, arranged them on the staff until I ended up with something like this. Okay, then I applied the wave function. In fact, I'll do it right here. I go to Effects, Wave, And then I was able to put in the number of cycles I wanted, and then again change the amplitude as wanted, or until I was happy with it. And then here is the final greeting card that I designed having that wave function. So just watch for the opportunities. The third one I want to show you is the line fill function. And the line fill function will add a pattern of lines to whatever shape you have. And then typically the applications are for engraving with like a scratch engraver, or for coloring in with a pen, or for something like the foil quill tool, which basically needs to rub across, an area with where you have the foil applied on top of something like cardstock in order to foil the shape. So the way it works is you just take effects and come in here to line fill. And then new to SCAL6, it used to be in the SCAL5 and earlier, there was just linear was your only option. Now then you can actually do some different types of patterns if you want to do that. And I urge you to look in the user manual, and I believe in the user manual there's a link to an expanded tutorial that goes through these various options and then some of the settings I use to get different effects. But with the basic one, which is typically the one that's being used, you put in whatever line spacing you want to use. You can set an angle for the lines, whatever you want that to be. Crosshatch will add more crosses, more extra crossing. So for example, well, I'll show you an example. So let's just say I have, well, let's leave that off for now. And I click on Auto Preview and click on OK. Now then, when you zoom in, you'll see that it's just, this linear pattern of lines that crosses the shape. However, if I had instead use the same settings, but I add one crosshatch to it and click on OK. Now then you'll see that it has done not only the lines in one direction, but also in the opposite direction. And then if you increase the crosshatch, it just keeps adding more and more lines. Now, it's going to take a lot longer for your cutter to be able to process, whatever this is. But for example, if you're trying to color in something and you want a really great filled pattern, this might be what you need to do. You might need to use more crosshatches to get that. And of course, that line fill, the size of the line you're using is related to whatever the size of the tool that you're putting in there. So if you have a thick Sharpie pen that you've inserted into your cutter, well, then you don't need as many lines because it's going to be wider. Versus if you're using something like a very thin Bic pen, or if you're using a scratch engraver, you need to use something much smaller. Even with a scratch engraver, you might find that you want to use less of a line fill that's necessary to get a solid fill. Again, it all depends on the look that you're going for. But my friend Omara Duarte did this one. She did a scratch engraving on acrylic, and she did a very tight engraving that would be similar to, well, even just this one right here for these words, you and me. But then when she did the larger image, she actually spaced the lines out, which kind of gave it a very cool look. So that's something to take into account, is that you have all these options to change the look you're going for. This next one is the Rhinestone Scatter. And this is something that also has been added in SureCuts 6. It wasn't present in 5, and I was so happy to see it show up, and here's why. For years, I've been helping people do rhinestone designing, and what often happens is a friend or even a business will contact the person and say, I want to do a rhinestone design, and this is what I want it to be. I want you to do my company logo, or I want you to use these words with this font or whatever. And the fact is, not everything can be turned into a rhinestone design. Rhinestone lettering tends to be very simple. You'll see a lot of shirts where they've just used Arial, right? They don't get into any kind of scripty fonts. And the reason for that is that when you do a rhinestone design, and let me say, pretend that this is what I'm doing, and this is basically sized to fit like on the front of a t-shirt. And when you click on preview to look at it, it's really hard to read. It does not look good, and no amount of editing is going to make this look any better, because the fact is there's just too much small detail in the lettering in order to convert it to circles and get it to look correct. Okay, so that's why I was so happy to see the Rhinestone Scatter come in, because sometimes people, they want some bling, added to the shirt. Well, do this in whatever. You could do a glitter HTV or whatever. But then if you want some actual rhinestones on it, then you can use the Rhinestone Scatter. And with the Rhinestone Scatter, you would pick whatever size, you need to use for your stones. And then down here, you can pick under shape. There's three, different shapes you can do. I'll pick rectangle, just to show you the example, and click on preview. And so, boom, there's your bling that you can add to it. And of course, you can make changes to it. You can change the scatter. You can make the scatter go further out. You can make it denser, less dense. All of these settings are here. And again, this is something that's covered in the SCAL6 user manual. My next favorite thing is the shadow layer function because I feel like SCAL has done an exceptional job of how they set up this window. So this one in particular has become even more important in the last year because there's so many sticker makers now, and sticker makers currently, when they make their stickers, a lot of them, they like to have two contour cuts. One is going to be the kiss cut that's going to go just through the top layer, and then the second is going to be a second contour cut that will be a perf cut, or a full cut. It's going to go all the way through the material, and that makes it easier for the user to be able to peel off the sticker. So this can all be done in one step in SCAL6. You just select it and go to Effects, Shadow Layer. And then in this window, first of all, you pick the shape of the shadow. Usually for stickers, you want rounded. And then the size is going to be whatever you want for the inner circle or the inner cut to be, say 0.05. Now then, you can do blackout. You'll notice right now the way it's set, it's going to cut out the very middle. But if I mark this option, then it does. It's going to leave that. And of course, that would be white because you'd be cutting that, from sticker paper. So that's typically with stickers, you just want a single outer cut. And then you have this option for print plus cut outline. And what that will do, it will take the original cut line for this design, which was going right along the print line, right along the print border, which is not what you want to cut. It's going to convert that to print plus cut print only, so you don't have to worry about it cutting. So now then your only cut line is just this new contour cut around the outside. Along with that also, it will remove this fill color so that you're not going to see that fill color after you click on OK. All right, but here's the cool thing. Remember how I said you want two cuts? Well, you can change the layer count to 2, and now then you're going to have a second cut made around the outside. Now it's the same distance as the one before. If you want it to be a little bit closer into that first cut, you can decrease the layer size variance. If you want it further out, then you can just increase that layer size variance, and then that second cut is going to be further out. You don't have to worry about this this end color because, again, as soon as I click on OK, because I have the print plus cut outline, it's going to get rid of the fill color. So now then I only just see the two cut lines. But that's not all. The shadow layer can also be used for doing some designing. For example, this right here, this is entirely created using the shadow layer function. And the way I did it is I started with just the word create. I typed out the word create and I welded it. And then, let's move it up just a little bit. And now then when I go to the shadow layer window, again, I pick, the shape of the shadow I want. And then in this case, I don't have to worry about these over here. Instead, I'm going to start with a starting color. And the starting color that I used below is just plain old red. And then the end color, well, you have to, before you can change the end color, you need to actually put in at least one layer count. So I'm going to put in 2 and then make that yellow. Okay. Then from there, I can just increase this layer count until I get all the way up. In this case, 10 is the maximum, but that's plenty. That gives you that depth, and the amount of color to kind of make the statement that you're trying to make. So that's something that's kind of a cool second application. And of course, you don't have to do that extreme. There's all sorts of variations in between in terms of, you could just do it twice and you could change and have different colors, etc. So lots of opportunities to design something that you either see or something you have in your own imagination. This next one is Object on Path, and it probably has the widest range of applications of any of the effects that are available in SCAL6. There's just so much you can do with it. So the one I'm showing is just a very basic one. I want to put circles. I want to create basically a scalloped oval here. So, and one thing you have to always remember when you're using this is that you want whatever over here on the layers panel, you want the shape that's going to be duplicated to be on top of or above whatever shape it's going on to. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So you go to Effects, Object on Path, and then over here, I'm going to have a count. I'm going to say Fill Path Length. And by the way, this is one that doesn't automatically have auto preview marked, so you have to remember to always mark that one. Then once I do that, I can change the spacing. I can decrease the spacing a little bit so I get just however much overlap I want between those circles. And then I can click on Weld. and it will weld those together. I can remove the path, that original path, because I don't need it anymore, and I end up with a scalloped oval. And then, of course, if I don't want to cut the middle, because this would cut as a frame, if I don't want the middle, then over on the style panel, let me pop it out. This is a nice little feature too to show you, is that you can just click on blackout and it removes that. And so this is now what would cut. Now then, another application, because I wanted to show several of them, is let's show I'm going to do this one, the owl and the pussycat, and I'm going to put it, oh, not that path, I'm using that for something else. I'm going to use a spiral. Okay, so, and you've seen this is something else that I've asked about before, not this particular phrase, but there'll be different, kind of very charming phrases, and people will want to put it into a spiral shape to put it on the bottom of, let's say, a dish. They're going to etch a glass dish or something. Okay, so again, this is going to be your lower level, and then you want to select the lettering, and then, oops, I didn't have the shift selected. There we go, I've got both of them. And then when you go to Effects, Object on Path, click on Auto Preview, you can see it automatically puts the text along the line, and it puts it right in the middle. Now then, you may decide that, well, you're probably not going to want that line anyhow for whatever application you're doing, but you can change it from middle to say bottom, and you can space those. It helps space the letters out if you want to. And if that's too much, you can come back to the offset and you can drag it back in. So lots of settings here that you can use to get the look that you exactly want. The other thing in a case like this, let's say you'd rather start from the outside and go inwards. Well, then you just click on reverse path order, and then again, because I had this set so low, I need to bring it out the other direction to kind of space it out. But in this case, again, I'm starting out here and moving it inwards. So anyway, very nice feature, and I've got one more to show you, one more example for this. And that is, let's say you have a path and you have a shape and you want to stretch that shape along this path. Again, with the arrow above the circle over here on the Layers panel, I then go to Effects, Object on Path, and in this case, I want to warp to path and stretch to path length. Then I need to click on Auto Preview, and you can see what it does. It basically just stretches that arrow out so that it fits that path and goes the full length of that path. So again, that opens up a whole range of designing possibilities when you start looking at things that you see out on the internet and you go, oh, I wonder, is there a way I can reproduce that? Well, just think about it. Just think about these tools that are available to you and how you can use them. So the last one is called Symmetrical Mirror, and the reason I like it is because I like symmetry. It makes my brain happy. So here's an example of a vase that I had traced. I downloaded from the internet and traced it, and you'll notice that the left side looks nice and smooth and the right side looks terrible. Well, instead of trying to fool around with the settings or or try to do node editing or whatever, I can go to Effects, Symmetrical Mirror, select from the menu, which one I want. And of course, all of this is covered, in the user manual. And then I can come down and make sure this is set about halfway, and it kind of does it automatically anyhow. It sets it halfway. And in a minute, I'll show you an example where you wouldn't do that. And then you can click on Update Preview, and I go, yeah, that looks so much better, and click on OK, and it basically has fixed it. Now, in some cases, you might look at this and say, well, that's kind of an editing feature, not a design feature, and I can't disagree with that argument. So I have an example of where you can use it for designing. So I've picked this swirl from the library, and you can use any shape to do this. So with that selected, I go to Effects, Symmetrical Mirror, and in this case, I want to bring this over until I just have just the tiniest bit of overlap available, and click on Update Preview. And you can see that now then I have two of them that are just touching. And one thing about the symmetrical mirror is that it always welds the shapes together so that you don't have to go back and do that. In fact, I can show that. If I turn off Show Outlines Only, you can see that it's welded together. Then I can take this, I can do it again. So this time I'm going to go to Effects, Symmetrical Mirror. I'm going to select bottom to top, right? Drag this up until it gets right up there like that, and then click on Update Preview to verify that it's working, and it is, and click on OK. Now, the only thing I'm going to say about this one is that I'm running 6.038B, which is a like kind of like just a test version for me because there was a problem with doing that second weld. So that's something that by the time this video comes out, I hope there's a 6.039 so that everybody will have it depending on whichever version of SCAL6 that they're using. But other than that, if you go back to, I believe, SCAL5, it should be fine if that's the version that you're using. But otherwise, it's going to be fixed. So anyway, that's it for Symmetrical Mirror. Thank you so much for watching this video. As I mentioned at the start, I plan to do a second part of my favorite things, designing, to cover even more of the tools you have available in SCAL. So please watch for that in another week or so.